What's up, Barflies and Bears fans? My name is Steven Zimmerman here for episode 2 of Z Formation. First off, I want to start out by thanking my fiance for this wonderful new Trubisky jersey that I have hanging behind me so I can get rid of the atrocity that we had back there last week. I'm sorry anyone had to see that. I've pretty much been living in it since she got it for me, so I'm sure it reeks, but you can't smell that, and thank God for that. Let's go ahead and just move right into the polls for this week. So the first question I asked before the game was, with Allen Robinson inactive and Kevin White and Javon Wims active, which Bears receiver do you expect to step up the most? Now on this poll I also included Josh Bellamy because of the role that he's been playing so far this season as our number 4 receiver. With one man down and with Gabriel and Miller expected to not necessarily play the whole game, I figured it was a logical conclusion to say that Josh Bellamy would probably getting a lot more snaps. But those of you voting on the poll disagreed with me. Y'all said that Javon Wims was probably going to be the biggest impact, and he was, according to the stat lines. Wims finished with 4 catches for 32 yards, while White and Bellamy only had 1 catch apiece. However, White's was for a 22-yard third down conversion, so I consider that a lot more impactful than what I would have expected going into the game. Overall, I really liked Nagy's confidence in Juice Wims. It showed that his hard work in the preseason was paying off. It was kind of a head-scratcher during the regular season that Wims wasn't getting more playing time, so to see him getting an opportunity and then taking advantage of it, I think was huge for him and his confidence and Nagy's confidence in him. So going in line with that, I was thinking another question of what's next for Kevin White. His contract is up at the end of the season, as all of us are aware, and I'm just kind of curious about where things might go from here. From a team perspective, I think that it would be logical to keep him as a depth piece, but significantly reduce his salary. Now that he's no longer on that first-round pick rookie contract, you can get him for cheaper and potentially keep him as a number 4 or 5 receiver, somebody who's just there for depth, but he already knows the playbook, he already knows the coaching staff and the guys around him. I think for the team, it would make a lot of sense. However, for Kevin White, I think that the most logical conclusion would be to get the hell out of Chicago. He has not had any success there, he's not been able to stay healthy, and it feels like this team has sort of given up on him. I don't know if that's true or not, that's just what it looks like from the outside looking in. He needs to go somewhere where he can get a fresh start, maybe make some more money, and just have a better opportunity. He can rebirth and rebuild himself this way. Now I've talked way too much about Kevin White, let's move on to the next topic. Second question I asked was, should Bradley Sowell be the starting fullback in the playoffs? I didn't think we'd be talking about a fullback heading into the playoffs, but Bradley Sowell showed out. There was a lot of Bradley Sowell in the backfield. There was more Bradley Sowell than I ever remember seeing Mike Burton in the backfield at any point with Fox and Loggins or with Helfrich and Nagy. Sowell was great in his lead blocking. He really hit the holes hard. He was coming through in the right spot, and he was doing everything that you want a fullback to be doing. He was moving a little slow, but at the end of the game, he was also playing left tackle, so that's kind of what you have to expect from an offensive lineman being played out of position like that. The thing was, he was making the right blocks, he was reading the right holes, and he was getting to the point of attack. We were seeing Mike Burton earlier in the year getting spun around, blocking outside the tackle on an inside zone play, just all kinds of weird stuff that an NFL fullback should have no problem diagnosing and taking care of. It's a little concerning that a backup offensive lineman is playing better than a guy who's supposed to be getting paid to be a fullback, but maybe this means they've found a solution at fullback, at least for right now. 78% of the vote said that Bradley Sowell should be the starting fullback, and I absolutely agree based on everything that I've just said and based on everything that I saw on Sunday. There's no reason why he can't do it. If you've got him, use him. So moving on to the next question. At halftime, I put up a poll asking, how do you feel about the game plan? Initially, I was thinking it was too conservative, but then I kind of sat back and thought about it and realized it's a perfect game plan. You need to play conservative in a game like this. There's no reason to go out and try to do anything flashy, even though we did see something flashy on that 2-point conversion. But the game was managed correctly. It was score fast, run clock, and then just keep running clock for the rest of the game. In the third and fourth quarters, the Bears had a drive that went 16 plays, 9 minutes. It's exactly what was called for. It helped prevent injuries. It didn't matter that the starters were in there, but we'll get to that later. So after the game, I kind of asked a no-duh question. Which unit was the best? Offense, defense, special teams, coaching. So I think you can make a really good argument for coaching being the strongest unit in this game. However, the defense was what was voted, and I'm inclined to agree with that. The defense held up really, really well. They did everything they needed to do, and even when the backups were in there, they still fought. They were still hungry. They still got after the quarterback. They still did everything that you expect to see out of this Bears team. That gives me a lot of confidence going into the playoffs now, because I see that the Bears' backups are just as capable as their starters. They might not be as impactful, but they're plenty capable. So I felt obligated to put special teams on this, even though it's kind of laughable to even consider that they could have been the best unit in almost any game that the Bears have played so far this season. Especially considering that Cody Parkey has now missed 10 kicks on the season. And it's starting to feel like not just the fan base is losing faith in him anymore. You're seeing more two-point conversions as the season goes along. You're seeing more fourth down attempts, so on and so forth. It's just this more aggressive mentality that they've been having, I think is a direct correlation to the kicking problems. So here's my proposal for the playoffs. Your defense is good. Don't kick field goals anymore. Just don't. Why bother? If you're in field goal range and it's fourth down, you don't have a field goal kicker anymore. You go for it. The Bears are 9 of 15 on fourth down so far this season. League average is 56%. 9 of 15 is 60%. So the Bears are actually above the league average when it comes to fourth down conversions. I know this is an extreme measure, but something's got to give. There's no point in trying to keep faith in a kicker that it doesn't even seem like has faith in himself. Obviously, that's not going to happen. It would just be nice to see something change in an attempt to fix this problem. Because it is a problem, and it's going to potentially cost the Bears a game. It's cost them points already. It cost them the Miami game. God forbid that should happen in the playoffs, and we're sitting here talking about the season that could have been if we actually had a kicker. No thanks, we're not the 98 Vikings. So now that I've got that out of my system, let's go ahead on to the next question. I asked, how do you feel about playing Philadelphia after today's performances and injuries for both teams? You got to keep in mind that Miller and Gabriel both went down for the Bears with injury. With Nick Foles getting hurt, that leaves Philadelphia's third-string quarterback potentially playing in this game. So I asked where the confidence level was, and most people think it's a tough game, but still a win. I'm in agreement that it's going to be tough, but definitely a win. It's the playoffs. Every game is going to be tough at this point. However, I think the Bears have played tougher games this season, playing with the backup against the Giants and Lions, that game against the Rams. That first game against the Packers was a slugfest. I think that the Bears can totally do this. I don't see them having a whole lot of problems here, but a big factor in this is going to be wide receiver health for the Bears. That's really going to affect the way that the Bears have to play offense. And it's not that they can't run offense through Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. It's just that if you do that, you become one-dimensional. And in the playoffs, being one-dimensional gets you beat. Even still, if they have to win with Bellamy and Kevin White and Javon Wims out there playing wide receiver, I think they can win. It's going to be tough, but they can win. They just beat a pretty good team in Minnesota last week with those guys at wide receiver, and they handled it very well in the second half. There's no reason to think that they can't continue that. So what this win is going to come down to is the defense. This defense is historically good. This team could really be something special, but they have to win to be remembered. Next poll that I put up was, do you agree with how long the starters were kept in the game? The starters weren't pulled until about halfway through the fourth quarter, when everything was pretty much said and done. Most people actually agreed with it. They said it was a good call. It kept momentum, which is a drastic swing from what we saw earlier this season when people were losing their shit over Matt Nagy not playing starters in the third preseason game. I think Nagy made the right call. He kept momentum going, he kept confidence in his players, and something else that we have to keep in mind is this is just Trubisky's third game back from a shoulder injury. He needs to stay loose, stay warm, and it won't become something serious. So just by allowing these guys to be out on the field and doing what they need to do in order to stay in shape, I think did a lot for this team. The final poll that I put up was asking about playoffs. How do you feel about it? It's pretty much the same results as last week, an even split between NFC champs and Super Bowl champs. At the very least, Fans seem to be expecting a Super Bowl appearance out of these Bears, which I think is huge. That's something that we never would have thought we were discussing at this point last season. How great is that? How great that we've come so far in so little time. That Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace have been able to completely 180 this franchise in just one season. Overall, for me, I agree with this. New Orleans is the only team that really scares me in the playoffs, and that's simply because of the Superdome. That's the bottom line. The Superdome is a loud place to play, and we saw issues with Trubisky getting the call in last week. There were multiple delay of game penalties. There were multiple timeouts that had to be taken because the stadium was too loud. The Bears quieted that down in the second half. That's not going to happen in New Orleans, especially not in a playoff atmosphere. So the Bears got to get that sorted out because that's a huge home field advantage for the Saints. So that's going to about wrap it up for today's video. On a separate note from actual football being played, Vic Fangio has already been contacted for 2 interviews with the Dolphins and the Broncos. And while it does kind of seem like an inevitability that he's going to leave this team for a head coaching position sooner or later, I don't want him to leave. I don't think anybody in Chicago does, especially the guys on the field that have grown so close with him over the last few years. I think if he goes anywhere, he's going to go somewhere warmer. I think Miami's a good contender. I think if anybody out west wanted a new head coach, he would definitely consider that a lot heavier than a cold weather place like New York or like Denver. That's just my opinion. That's somewhat based on rumors we heard last year, but there's no substance behind that. That's just me speculating. If Vic leaves, that leaves the question of who's going to be the Bears defensive coordinator next season. A lot of talk lately has been about Todd Bowles being a hot candidate to take this position, as he's also an Andy Reid disciple and he's got a history with Nagy in addition to running a similar 3-4 scheme to Vic Fangio. Trying to think of a more dark horse candidate, I came up with Dom Capers. Bears fans should be familiar with Dom Capers, as he was the defensive coordinator up in Green Bay for a long time and gave us hell. The players on the Bears match up with a similar 3-4 style that Dom Capers likes to run, and he's got a history of success running that system. I think that the system failed in Green Bay not because of his coaching or his scheme, it was because of the talent. And that's been proven so far this year. I think Dom Capers is still a very capable coach who would be a good candidate to come to Chicago. Capers would be able to help this team maintain their winning mentality and also give it to their rival team and his former employer twice a year, basically giving them the finger and saying, Bears just handed you another L. So I wouldn't really be thrilled if Fangio left, but at the same time, I want to be a supportive fan and allow him to go on to be the best coach that Vic Fangio can be. And perhaps taking that next step into head coaching could do that for him. Obviously, this is all just conjecture and speculation at this point, and we Bear fans may have nothing to worry about. At the same time, it's still fun to think in hypotheticals and kind of weigh our options, see what's out there, and maybe try and predict what this coaching staff is going to do next. So that's going to be our running poll for this week. If Vic Fangio goes, who would you want to see fill in for him? I'm going to put that up on my Twitter, @RagingBearFan. You can also find it on @BearsBarroom. And that's going to do it for today's episode. You all have a great rest of your week, and bear down.
Yeah, you know you got to feel it. You got to feel it.